2 minutes later, a truly magnificent swan, as white as snow, came swooping in and landed on a branch nearby. Don Minnie walked over to it, and once again a curious, twittery conversation took place. A much longer one this time, with Don Minnie doing nearly all the twittering, and the swan nodding and nodding. Then Don Minnie turned to little Billy and said, "Swan thinks it's a great idea. He says he can do it, but he's just a bit anxious because you've never flown before. He says you must hang on very tight to his feathers." "Don't you worry about that," little Billy said. "I'll hang on somehow. I don't want to be roasted alive and eaten by the gruncher." Little Billy climbed onto Swan's back. Many of the Minpins who had flown away a short while before were now returning on their birds. Their tiny sacks were bulging. They stood around on the branches, staring in wonder at the sight of this small human preparing to take off on Swan. "Goodbye, little Billy," they called out. "Good luck, good luck." And with that, the great swan spread its wings and glided gently downward through the many branches of the big tree. Little Billy hung on tight. Oh, it was thrilling to be flying on the back of this great swan. It was wonderful to be up in the air and to feel the air swishing past his face. He hung on very tightly to Swan's feathers. And suddenly, there it was, just below them, the hollow billow of orange-red smoke and steam coming from the nostrils of the awesome gruncher. The smoke enveloped the beast completely, and yet through the smoke, as they got very close, little Billy could just make out the enormous black shadow of some hairy monster. The snorting grew louder. As the brute got more and more excited by the nearness of the delicious little Billy smell, the smoke began coming out faster and faster. Little Billy could feel the monster getting closer. Swan was flying back and forth right in front of a snorting cloud of smoke, tempting and tantalizing the beast and driving him mad with greed. The beast, or rather the cloud of smoke, kept lunging at little Billy, but Swan was too quick for him and jinked away every time. The snorting grew louder and more ferocious every second, and the woofs, woofs of thick, hot steam came pouring out, thicker than ever. Once, Swan looked round to see if little Billy was all right. Little Billy nodded and smiled, and he could swear Swan nodded and smiled back at him. At last, Swan must have decided they had done enough teasing. The great, thick, orange-red cloud was leaping up and down in a frenzy of hunger and desire, and the whole forest was echoing with the snorts and growls of the awesome creature. Swan glided round and headed in a straight line towards the edge of the forest, and of course the vast cloud of smoke came hurtling after it. Swan was very careful to fly low all the time, keeping just in front of the gruncher, leading him on, threading a path carefully through the great trees of the forest. The scent of human food was very strong in the gruncher's nostrils, and he must have been thinking that so long as he kept going flat out, he would catch his meal in the end. Suddenly, right in front of them, on the edge of the forest, was the lake. The gruncher, hurtling along right behind them, was interested only in the glorious human scent he was following. Swan flew straight towards the lake. It skimmed low over the water. The gruncher kept going. Little Billy, looking back, saw the gruncher plunging right into the lake, and then the whole lake seemed to erupt in a mass of boiling, steaming, frothing, bubbling water. For a brief moment, the terrible red-hot smoke-belching gruncher made the lake boil and smoke like a volcano. Then the fire went out, and the awesome beast disappeared under the waves. When it was all over, Swan and Little Billy flew higher and circled the lake for a last look. And suddenly the whole sky around them was filled with birds, and every bird had one or more Minpins on its back. Little Billy recognized Don Minnie riding on a fine jay, and he was waving and cheering as he flew alongside them. It seemed that all the other Minpins from the big tree had turned up as well to witness the great victory over the dreaded gruncher. Every kind of bird was circling around Little Billy and Swan, and the Minpins on their backs were waving and clapping and shouting with joy. Little Billy waved back and laughed and thought how wonderful it all was. Then, led by Swan, all the birds and the Minpins returned to the home tree. Back in the tree, there was a tremendous celebration for Little Billy's victory over the dreaded gruncher. Minpins from all over the forest had flown in on their birds to cheer the young hero, and all the branches and twigs of the great tree were crowded with tiny people. When the cheers and clapping had died down at last, Don Minnie stood up to make a speech. Minpins of the forest, he cried, raising his small voice so that it could be heard all over the tree. The murderous Gruncher, who has gobbled up so many thousands of us Minpins, has gone forever. The forest floor is safe at last for us to walk on. So now we can all go down to pick blackberries and winkleberries, and puckleberries and muckleberries, and twinkleberries and snosberries to our heart's content. And our children can play among the wild flowers and the roots all day long. Don Millie paused and turned his eyes upon little Billy, who was sitting on a branch not far away. But ladies and gentlemen, he went on, who is it we have to thank for this great blessing that has come upon us? Who is the savior of the Minpins? Don Millie paused again. The Minpins in their thousands sat listening intently. Our savior, he cried out. Our hero, our wonder boy is, as you already know, our human visitor, little Billy. Cheers and shouts of hooray for little Billy from the crowd. Don Millie now turned and spoke directly to little Billy. You, my boy, have done a wonderful thing for us, and in return, we wish to do something for you.